And now we're talking about, I think, some of the bigger winners of this ban list. And the first thing I want to talk about is K9 decks. And we're going to start with K9 Vanquish Soul. And then we're going to talk about some other K9 variations that I could definitely see being more popular moving forward. K9 Vanquish Soul, all things considered, loses a bunch of cards from this ban list. You know, we're losing 2 Jokels, we're losing 2 Holy Sus, we're losing 2 Cases, which is 6 cards out of the deck. But we get 2 Stake Your Soul and 2 Raisin back, which is, in my opinion, a good trade. And also just in general, the concept, I think it's pretty clear why I think that this deck is a winner from this ban list, because every other deck we've talked about so far is just losing cards, right? This is the only deck where you're losing something but gaining something else back. Like, this is the only deck that's making a trade-off, basically. I guess Draco Tail also does with Burst Protocol. It also gets cards back. We're going to talk about that in a second. But this deck, like, lose some Jokels and Holy Sus and Cases, gain Raisin and Stake Your Soul. It's not even like a net negative in some ways, right? Like, and I can't stress the most important, the most important thing that I cannot stress enough is having a second copy of Raisin. And the reason why that is so important, not just for consistency, but also if you have 1 Raisin in rotation, you cannot summon it from the deck with Holy Su if it's at 1, which makes you so much less flexible when you're trying to interrupt your opponent with Holy Su. Because you simply cannot just summon Raisin anywhere you want to pop that monster, because it always has to be like rock, summon from hand, and it's like, it's so clunky with 1 Raisin. It kind of works, but it's clunky. So we get more fires, we get more starters, we get more Raisins, we get more Stake Your Soul. It's a pretty good trade-off for Holy Su, because quite frankly, this might sound weird, but Holy Su, in my opinion, is one of the weakest cards in this deck before the ban list, because it's so unlikely to actually be a hand trap. Like, I know I've said it before, but I resolved Holy Su going second 0 times at YCS Bologna, which I know is unlucky. It's definitely a little bit on the unlucky side, but like, I didn't draw Holy Su Dark Fire a single time going second in the entire YCS. So I think this is a good trade-off, because Holy Su was not very consistent anyways. So you're losing 2 Holy Sus, which usually wasn't a hand trap going second because you didn't have the attributes for it, and you're gaining Raisin and Stake Your Soul for consistency, which is good. The K9 hits for this deck, quite frankly, I don't think they matter much, because you can just replace the Jokels with Chaotic Elements, and I think that does just fine. I only played 2 Ks for K9 at YCS Bologna, so I think having 1 is fine, it's manageable. In terms of the deck build, obviously you're going to play 3 Raisin, 3 Stake Your Soul, so that's going to be 4 cards in. You're going to remove 2 Holy Su, 2 Jokel, and 2 Case from this list. Another thing that's, I think, going to be standard is 1 Noroi, I think, or less Mad Loves. I guess that depends how popular Droll Lockbird is, because quite frankly, the Vanquish Soul starters are pretty good into Molcharmi Fuwalos. So if Molcharmi Fuwalos is popular, then I think you should try to play 3 Mad Love and not multiple Norois. If Droll Lockbird, even if it's just at 2, if a lot of people play Droll, then Noroi is one of the best starters in the deck, right? But I don't think you want to play 3 Raisin, 3 Mad Love, and 3 Noroi in the same deck, because that is 9 normal summons. That is way too many. The sweet spot for normal summons is usually around like 5 to 7, I would say, is like a solid amount of normal summons for a deck. Unless your deck just only plays with its normal summon, but for the most part, it's like maybe 8. Maybe 8. Like this version of the deck is playing 1 Raisin, 3 Mad Love, 2 Noroi, and the Rhoda. That is 7. My deck at Bologna had 3 Noroi and Rhoda with 3 Mad Love and Raisin, so that was 8 normal summons. that's around where you're trying to be. And even that, even 8 was already like on the verge of, I think looking back in hindsight, I would have only played 2 Noroys. I think the standard is going to be 1 Noroi, 3 Raisin, 3 Madlove, 1 Rhoda. And the reason why I would max out on Raisin, Madlove, and Rhoda is because those are actually okay to draw together rather than Noroi plus Madlove is pretty bad, but Raisin plus Madlove is okay because you normal summon the Raisin, then you make rock and you can special the Madlove from hand. So like 2 normal summons in that case, they don't clash as much as Noroi does with them. And the Raisin Madlove stuff is just way better into Molcharmies than the K9 stuff. So I think you're still gonna play K9 in this deck, no doubt. The K9 cards give you a lot of value and a lot of pushes and so on and so forth. But I think the ratio is just gonna be 3 Izuna, 1 Jokul, 1 Lupus, 1 Case. And then I'm gonna be honest with you, there is even a world where you maybe play just like a very small K9 package and you don't even play Lantern and Forced Release. You can, maybe you still play them, but like there's a world where you can cut them for more non-engine or other consistency. And you just use like the K9s as a very, very small package that has synergy with your deck. And you don't need to go too crazy with them because the deck has good grind game. Force seems like a good side still. Maybe you side deck more K9s for going first. Like maybe you put Lantern and Forced Release in your side deck or whatever. I think there's going to be 2 versions of this deck. Where it's like, I mean, essentially pure Vanquish Soul. I think pure Vanquish Soul doesn't really exist with 1 Holy Su. I think you would always play at least Izuna. Like I just don't see a reason. They're way too synergistic. Izuna, you would always play Izuna, Lupus, and 1 Jokul in Vanquish Soul. Like that would, I guess that would still classify as like a pure Vanquish Soul deck, right? Like I think you would always play the small K9 package. And I guess what's the minimum, right? 3 Izuna, 1 Jokul, 1 Lupus. That would be the minimum. That would work. So in that case, if you open Jokul, let's say you open Jokul plus Jiaolong, you can just go activate Jokul, special Jiaolong. Jokul searches Izuna for the opponent's turn. Then you make Ripper to insulate from hand traps. And then Ripper gets you Case. And Case gets you, I guess you would play 1 Lantern. Or at least maybe 1 Noroi, right? And then you just go Case for Noroi, summon Noroi, special another Izuna or Lupus from the deck, and then go from there. I think that's okay. So that's going to be 1 version of this deck with the small K9 package, which in my book looks cool because you don't have to play the bricks. You know, I like that more. But I could also see people play like 3 Izuna, 1 Jokul, 1 or 2 Noroi, 1 or 2 Lantern, Lupus, Case, Forced Release, and then a couple chaotic elements. That's also a way I could see this deck. But no matter what, this deck is going to be solid. The only reason why I'm hesitant to say like, oh yeah, this deck is crazy for sure, is that one other thing is going to change, and that's the next thing we're going to take a look at, and that's Draco Tail. I am not sure if the matchup dynamic between Vanquish Soul K9 and Draco Tail stays the same after Burst Protocol. Because that used to be the biggest reason to play Vanquish Soul, was that it had a really good Draco Tail matchup. And that was because Draco Tail had a relatively fragile, or not fragile, but like Draco Tail had a relatively fair end board, and it was really weak to the K9 cards in general, right? Like Ripper was really good against it, Izuna was really good against it, and so on and so forth, right? Like Draco Tail had a big weakness to the K9 cards. The problem I have is that I'm not sure if that's the case anymore with the Albaz Draco Tail from Burst Protocol. Because if they open access to the Albaz cards, they have a lot more disruptions, and they especially have disruptions that are good against K9 now, right? Like, we can all of a sudden, they can out an untargetable Exceed monster that you make with Lupus, because they can summon Albaz with the new Ecclesia, and then fuse it into a Mirror Jade, and then you're not only is your rank 5 gone, but they also have a Mirror Jade now, for example, right? And that's rough. That's harder to break with Engine now. The matchup, I think, is not as simple as it used to be. That applies to every deck. If Draco Tail branded full combos, they win. I don't know if that's true. I'm gonna be honest with you. I think the Draco Tail branded deck is beatable. I think the end board is okay. I don't think it does too much. I just think it, like, this deck has a harder time beating it now than it used to have. And I think that's hard for K9 Vanquish Soul. And I think losing one of your best matchups and turning it into, like, maybe not a terrible matchup. It might still be slightly favored even, but it's no longer just like the, I don't know, 70% matchup that it used to be. Are they even playing the OG Albaz? That is optional in branded Draco Tail, but some people are, some people aren't. Just tuned in. How good is Vanquish Soul K9 now? I think it's got potential. I'm definitely gonna try it. I'm gonna mess around with it. I think it's gonna be solid. I personally think it's gonna be like a tier 1.5 deck. I think it's slightly behind some other options, but I do think it is good. Another deck that I wanted to take a look on before we move on to Draco Tail. I think it's a good time to talk about K9 Crystron. Now, this list here, actually, this list is from a while ago. This is even before they limited Crystron inclusion. This was a ban list from basically back in the day. The only cards that really change in this deck list are Jokul to 1 and Paradise Smasher is now banned. So essentially, what I've heard people talk about, and I do think that is a realistic scenario, is that, like, you can just play K9 Crystron, and instead of doing Paradise Smasher, you do Spell Canceller. And this was even before Noroi came out. So you don't even lose a lot of consistency. Like, if we look at this deck list, right? If we analyze this deck list and compare it to what it could be now, we have 3 inclusions. Those are back. It only played 1 case, so that apparently doesn't matter. You lose 2 Jokuls, but you gain the Norois. So this deck 100% is viable. Which is a big problem because this deck is probably the most toxic deck in the game if it sees play. Like, this deck is disgusting. So they've gotten rid of Paradise Smasher, they've gotten rid of Mjolnir, but I'm gonna be honest with you, I think there's a very realistic chance, because they gave us inclusion back to 3, that people are just gonna do Spell Canceller with this deck, which is really annoying, because this deck basically, it basically just, like, spits out negates like it does nothing. 3 Jokul is much more important than someone who didn't play the deck can imagine. That is true. This deck is giga unfair if it opens Jokul. Jokul reveal Solfador is insane. It really is. Jokul reveal Solfador, you cannot hand trap that for your life. Like, there's no amount of hand traps that you can have to stop Jokul plus Solfador. Like, that's insane. So having less Jokuls is good. This deck has a total of 5 Jokuls, basically, right? You have 1 Jokul, 3 Chaotic Elements, and 1 case, which is 5 copies of Jokul total. Everything else you have to go through other plays to find the Jokul, which is weaker to other hand traps. Like, for example, I don't know, Noroi can get impermed, right? Like, if you summon Noroi and it gets impermed, there's honestly, the chances are not too bad that the turn ends for this deck. So, like, it is a little bit easier to interact with. It's hard to say whether it actually is the force to be reckoned with that people are making it out to be. But I'm gonna be honest with you, I think they should have just hit this card or Spell Canceller just in case. And actually, it's quite surprising to me that they bring back inclusion to 3 so quickly, which I don't really mind, to be honest with you. I like Crystron as a deck. I don't like K9, but I like Crystron. I think having 3 inclusion is okay. But not preemptively hitting Spell Canceller or the Imperial Princess is kind of crazy to me. When you're giving back K9, because remember, K9 Crystron, just a couple of months ago, this deck was the reason, or one of the main reasons, for the YCS Anaheim disaster, the stream, you know, where I made the crash out video after. This is the deck that won it with Mjolnir, right? With the it was Imperial Princess with Mjolnir and so on and so forth. Like it was this deck that caused all of that. Like it caused the crash out, it caused the terrible YCS stream and all that. And so like giving this deck some tools back is kind of weird, especially when they're not addressing Spell Canceller or Quinkery. So I guess we'll have to wait and see. I'm gonna be honest with you. This deck is not my style. I think this deck is... I'm not gonna play this deck. I can already tell you that much. Because this is just like combo pile at its finest, trying to auto win with Spell Canceller and Infinity Negates and stuff like that. I'm not gonna play this deck. I don't want to lose to cards like Fuba and then my opponent draws into more hand traps when I'm trying to Spell Cancel lock them out of the game. Not the deck that I would play. I would always play K9 Vanquish Soul before this. I think it's not great going second into most of the decks in the format, and I typically tend to just dislike the decks that are trying to auto win going first too much. But that doesn't change the fact that it's probably a good deck. Just because I'm not going to play it doesn't mean it's bad.